consecration to Mary. Pope Francis leads the world in a solemn prayer for peace between Russia and Ukraine. We have a report from Rome. President in Poland. American troops and refugees from Ukraine receive a visit from the commander-in-chief. Fighting for life. Another state approves a law to protect the lives of the unborn. And beloved icon. On a sacred feast, learn more about an image of Our Lady that is important to both Catholics and Orthodox faithful. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, March 25th, 2022. Thank you so much for being with us tonight on this Solemnity of the Annunciation. I'm Tracy Sable. Inside a packed St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis issued a call for peace today by consecrating both Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Perché oggi abbiamo esaurito il vino della speranza.
In his prayer, the Holy Father asked the Virgin Mary for peace, saying through her heart, she can ensure a future that cares for the needs of the whole human family and calm the anxieties of the world. Thousands of people took part inside and outside of the Basilica. The Blessed Virgin is beloved in both Russia and Ukraine. Joining us now from Rome is Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Andreas, great to see you. Can you tell us more about the consecration?
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, for having me. Well, there was great excitement about the consecration of Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary here in Rome. Thousands of people have flocked here to St. Peter's Square to be a part of the happenings in the Basilica. After the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Pope Francis had invited all bishops and priests around the world to join him in entrusting both countries to the intercession of Our Lady of Vladimir. At the same time, Papal Almoner Cardinal Konrad Krajewski also held a ceremony at the shrine in Portugal. Faithful from around the world participated in the prayers outside the Basilica, which was closed for tourists to show their closeness to the population in Ukraine. Also, Ukrainian refugees who have found shelter in Italy joined the celebration.
Andreas, why is Pope Francis taking such a step, and why did he choose Our Lady of Fatima?
Well, in 1917, during the appearances, Our Lady of Fatima told visionaries that she wished Russia to be consecrated to her. There were various consecrations, but visionary Sister Lucia confirmed that the entrustment by St. John Paul II in 1984 indeed did satisfy Mary's request. Then, Russia and Ukraine were both part of the Soviet Union. In Fatima, Mary promised that if Russia is consecrated to her, a period of peace will follow, which was the case with the fall of the USSR. Now, a new war has started, and there is a clear and present danger that it could develop into World War III. The period of peace seems to be ending. In order to avoid this, the Holy See reacted in two ways, diplomatically and spiritually. First, Pope Francis went to the Russian ambassador to the Holy See immediately after the invasion into the Ukraine had started. A pontiff going to an embassy and not vice versa is practically unheard of. He sent two cardinals to Ukraine, spoke with the Russian Orthodox Patriarch Kirill, and had the Secretariat of State reach out to their contacts in Russia. When it comes to diplomacy, it's always hard to understand the direct effects of these actions. But many diplomats here in Rome affirm the important leadership of the Holy See in this conflict. Secondly, Pope Francis immediately called to a spiritual battle. Ash Wednesday was turned into a day of prayer and fasting for Ukraine, even before the aggressions had begun. Many masses were celebrated in St. Peter's for peace. This is culminating now, today. This was culminating now, more than a month after the invasion began, into the consecration to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Theologians here refer to it as a spiritual terremoto, an earthquake, which will send shockwaves around the world from this celebration here at St. Peter's and across the globe.
And Andreas, before I let you go, I'm curious, where did the idea come from?
Well, there was a letter from the Ukrainian bishops who wrote to the Holy Father asking him to consecrate Ukraine again to Our Lady of Vladimir. They made it public, and even our journalists here in Rome at Catholic News Agency wrote about this. And then, only last week, the Vatican announced that they would hold this celebration. So there wasn't a lot of time to prepare for this big event. But it also shows that this is not just for show. Pope Francis was very sincere about this step. He decided to hold it today on the Feast of the Annunciation and the celebration of penitence. The Pope heard confession himself during the celebrations, and in the prayer of the consecration, he also asked for forgiveness on behalf of humankind, as we seem to still have not learned from the wars of the past. Peace is only possible if we repent. This is the message of the day, and this is what Our Lady of Fatima asked.
Well, Andreas, thank you so much for your report today. Andreas Thonhauser, EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief. Thank you again.
Thank you, Tracy.
President Joe Biden praised the Ukrainian people today, saying that they have a lot of backbone and guts. He was speaking with members of the 82nd Airborne Division stationed in Poland. The president told the U.S. troops that we are trying to, quote, keep the massacre from continuing. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
In Poland, U.S. soldiers welcomed their commander-in-chief, later eating pizza together and snapping photos. The visit, part of President Joe Biden's plan to demonstrate America's commitment to defend Poland, which borders Ukraine and is a vital NATO member. And with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin standing near him, the president laid out what's on the line.
We're in the midst of, and I don't want to sound too philosophic here, but you're in the midst of a fight between democracies and oligarchs.
President Biden thanked the troops for their service, for volunteering, calling them an amazing group of women and men.
You are the finest fighting force in the history of the world.
Mr. President, nice to meet you.
The White House says members of the 82nd Airborne Division have also visited with the bishops of 3 Catholic dioceses, and they're planning an upcoming Mass to celebrate Palm Sunday in the Rzeszow Cathedral. Meanwhile, the fighting continues. This drone footage released by the Ukrainian military claims to show the destruction of a Russian tank. Near Kyiv, smoke was seen rising from a residential area after heavy shelling. And Russian President Vladimir Putin accused the West of trying to cancel Russia and the Russian people. A young woman who fled Mariupol says she encountered several Russian checkpoints.
A Russian soldier, after checking our documents, he wished us having a nice trip, and I was very confused by these words. And then 20 minutes after, the rockets just began shooting.
President Biden started his day meeting with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
We're coming together to reduce Europe's dependence on Russian energy.
The president says Russia has been using its resources to coerce and manipulate other countries, then taking the profits to fund the war against Ukraine. Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, a closer look at the rise in deaths caused by fentanyl. Plus, we explore the sorrowful plight of church vandalism in the United States. Arizona's legislature has passed a pro-life heartbeat law. It bans abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy with strong penalties for physicians who might knowingly violate it. The bill now moves to Governor Doug Ducey for his signature. The new statute mirrors Mississippi's heartbeat law, which awaits a U.S. Supreme Court ruling. While opioid-related deaths are on the rise in the United States, the CDC estimated over 100,000 people died of drug overdoses from October 2020 to October 2021, with nearly 2/3 of those cases involving synthetic opioids such as fentanyl. Joining me now to discuss is Dr. Bob Lahita, director of the Institute for Autoimmune and Rheumatic Diseases at St. Joseph Health and author of Immunity Strong, Boost Your Natural Healing Power and Live to 100. Dr. Lahita, welcome back. So great to see you. A lot to talk about, but first, what do you think is fueling this opioid epidemic now?
Well, the opioid epidemic has been going on for many years, I would say. And we knew that heroin has always been in the streets, and it seems that it's getting across our borders with greater ease. Now, to lace it up and make it even stronger, it's laced with a drug called fentanyl. Now, fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin. So they lace the heroin and absolutely cause overdoses in almost everyone who injects themselves with this concoction. The mixture is usually made by some amateur somewhere who doesn't really know the potency of the drug fentanyl.
And it seems like it's definitely more potent than other drugs such as heroin. At least we're hearing that.
Yes, it's very, very potent. And you've heard that in a juvenile detention center in the Midwest, there were actually 4 juveniles and 4 staff members who were overcome because the fentanyl, which can be aerosolized, was in the ventilation system. And we also saw that in Florida at the summer beach party of some cadets from West Point who were overcome with fentanyl-laced heroin. Believe it or not, the rescuers, the people doing CPR and trying to resuscitate these young men, were also overcome with fentanyl and had to be treated with these anti-opiates like Narcan.
It's so very concerning. And also, in addition to drug use, alcohol abuse has also been on the rise. And according to the New York Times, in 2020, alcohol-related deaths actually outnumbered COVID deaths for people younger than 65 years old. Dr. Lahita, what do you think is causing this rise in overall substance abuse, and how can people, deal with stress in a healthier way?
Well, Tracy, it's due to the fact that people were locked down for some time. A lot of people were by themselves and stressed out. And I talk about this in my book, the alienation from other members of society, the lack of companionship, the lack of a compartner, even the lack of a dog or a cat really has a depressive effect on people. So they resort to either drugs or alcohol. And it's so easy to get addicted to things like fentanyl and heroin, and it's easy to drown your sorrows in alcohol. And that's why I was astounded by what you said, and that number is true. Less than the age of 65, alcoholism was increased drinking in 60% of those people increased and actually caused their deaths. So this is extraordinary. And in my book, I talk about boosting the immune system with, relieving stress, taking vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, doing yoga, doing exercise. All of those things are there to boost your immune system. Even if you've been vaccinated or have been infected with COVID, this is a good thing to do, to get out of the house. And now we're relieving the mask mandates and we're getting rid of all the lockdowns, which is a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And I was going to ask you that, we're hearing about this new strain of COVID coming along, and we're, lucky to have vaccines in order to prevent infection. But what would be some of your tips maybe to boost our immune system so that we don't get COVID or maybe another type of infection during this time?
Well, the good news is that it is the BA2, which we call the stealth variant of the Omicron, which generally is an upper respiratory infection causing cough, fever, fatigue, and major congestion. This variant is, unfortunately, we don't know the numbers because people get sick, they test themselves, and they stay home. They don't go to the hospital. And we only right now follow people who are in the emergency room, in the hospital, or in the intensive care unit. So what you can do to boost yourself, boost your immune system, is take care of your microbiome, which is the organisms in your bowel. Probiotics, prebiotics, very, very important. Relieve stress, learn how to meditate, learn how to do yoga. These are really critical. I mean, people who undergo divorce, people who get very ill, people who move into a new house, take exams, have an accident in their car. All of these people have lowered host resistance. Their resistance to infection generally goes down, and we know that from both experimental data and practical data. So my advice is get your sleep, get your rest, learn to do meditation, yoga, exercise, and of course, the antioxidants such as that in pomegranate juice and other antioxidants, which are in your supermarket, actually, that should be taken and taken on a daily basis.
Okay, well, great tips. Thank you so much, Dr. Lahita. Always appreciate your time and analysis.
Thank you, Tracy.
Up next, taking a closer look at recent anti-Catholic vandalism in the U.S. Plus, learn about an icon of the Blessed Virgin Mary beloved by both Catholic and Orthodox faithful. U.S. bishops have noticed a trend of Catholic churches and statues being vandalized. Correspondent Mark Irons reports on a recent spike in cases as the clergy look for answers.
In Washington, D.C., a crime on Catholic property caught on video. In December, a statue of Our Lady of Fatima outside the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception vandalized. Mary's face beaten with a hammer. Her hands knocked off too. A disturbing incident, though not isolated.
There seems to be a rapid rise in this, so something is happening.
This month, outside Detroit, Michigan, a man charged with breaking into a Catholic church, damaging property, and destroying windows. Last month in Georgia, religious statues destroyed outside a Catholic parish. And in Ohio, a fire investigators say was deliberately set at a Catholic school, causing $1 million in damage. Catholic bishops have been keeping track of all the vandalism here in the U.S. And with the recent rise in destruction at holy sites, one of the big questions remains, why?
Of all those people who do this sort of thing, there'd be many different reasons.
Monsignor Stephen Rossetti is a priest in the Archdiocese of Washington. He's also an exorcist and a licensed psychologist.
Some of them will be emotionally disturbed. Others will be angry at the church, angry at religion, angry at God.
According to continually updated numbers from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, at least 26 incidents have occurred across 35 states in the District of Columbia since May 2020.
It does, require us to be a little bit alert and on guard.
Archbishop Thomas Winsky of Miami, Florida, believes increasing divisiveness within society could be causing people to lash out.
We live in a society that is, beset by culture wars on different fronts. And so because of that, you'll see these emotions or these angers expressing themselves in different ways.
A security camera caught this footage in Jacksonville, Florida. These 3 young adults were arrested earlier this month for vandalism. They drew vulgar images and a satanic phrase on statues of the Holy Family. Monsignor Rossetti says individuals involved in Satanism may be carrying out some of the vandalism.
I would just implore everyone who is practicing magic or falling away from the faith, return to the Lord, return to the faith.
The destruction tracked by U.S. bishops includes arson, statues beheaded, limbs cut, smashed, and painted, gravestones defaced with swastikas, and anti-Catholic language. Last week, EWTN News Nightly had questions for the White House.
Is the president aware of that destruction taking place right now across the U.S.?
The president, the White House, and the United States would oppose any destruction or desecration of religious institutions of any kind, and certainly Catholic churches. The president himself is a Catholic.
In the end, the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception did not press charges against the man in this video. The rector of the Basilica wrote, "We pray for the perpetrator through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary under her title of Our Lady of Fatima."
That's who we are as Christians, to forgive and to love all people.
In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
The Madonna of Kyiv, also known as Our Lady of Vladimir, is one of the most famous Marian icons in the world. The icon is associated with several Marian apparitions. I recently spoke with Michael Lichens, editor of the Catholic Exchange, to discuss this icon and its relevance today. Well, Michael, welcome. Great to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. If you don't mind, could you tell us a little bit more about the history of Madonna of Kyiv?
Absolutely. When you hear the name Madonna of Kyiv, there's 2 icons that will come to mind for most historians.
One is called Our Lady Oranta, or of Orans, and she is made of mosaic pieces from the 11th century in the St. Sophia Cathedral in Kyiv, which was built just after the time of St. Vladimir the Great, who's kind of the great founder and saint of the Eastern Orthodox Church in the Slavic lands. But the one that has been talked about a lot is sometimes called Our Lady of Vladimir. That icon was another miraculous one that had been in Kyiv since at least the 12th century, and she was considered like the mosaic one, Our Lady of Orans, she is considered a protectress of Kyiv, a protectress of the Slavic people in that region. Unfortunately, she was taken to the city of Vladimir sometime in the 14th century, and it is now in a gallery in Moscow, but is still considered the most sacred icon in Russian Orthodoxy, besides maybe Our Lady of Kazan. She is still a miraculous piece. She will still gets devotion, despite that she's in a museum and a gallery. She still has plenty of pilgrims that come to visit her, and she is still conducting miracles to this day. To a point where people, when they have visions of Mary in Ukraine, even up to the 20th century, they will sometimes say she is just like Our Lady of Vladimir, or in the West, we might call her Our Lady of Tenderness.
And you mentioned those apparitions. Can you maybe talk about some of the different stories of people seeing Our Lady?
The major ones, probably the ones that still defy the imagination, happened in 1987, a year to the day after the Chernobyl explosion, when, if you were living in Ukraine at the time, you thought, not only is this feeling like the end of the world, what the greatest nuclear accident in history is happening, the Russian government was refusing, the Soviet government, I should say, was refusing to tell anyone anything, and most people had to learn it from Western sources, because the Russian government did not want anyone to know about this major accident that happened just north of Kyiv, the capital city. Chernobyl hit the news recently because that was one of the first things that the army was taking in its invasion of Ukraine. But when those apparitions started, there was even an attempt to say this is just radiation. We're seeing a silver aura in an old, closed-down Orthodox church in the town of Rzeszow. But people kept showing up. The KGB attempted to install roadblocks, use militias to stop people from going. This wasn't an unknown practice with Marian apparitions and the Soviets. But among the things Mary did once she started speaking, especially to two visionaries, one by the name of Joseph Turelia, who was a prisoner of the Gulag until about a year before that time, was warning them that Russia needed to be converted, as she had asked us to do at Fatima. She also was warning them that Russia's aggression would come again and that they would face a major invasion, something that seemed bizarre when the Soviet Union was collapsing a couple years after that apparition, but it's been coming back to people's minds more and more lately.
Maybe can we talk about how, Madonna of Kyiv is able to maybe bring two sides together?
And that's exactly one of the hopes is that the Russians and Ukrainians are in many ways, they're a distinct people, they're a distinct group of Slavic people, but from the different imaginations of different historians, they've often been interrelated people. Gorbachev, for example, is the son of a Russian father and a Ukrainian mother, and he didn't see them as that distinct per se. But in terms of religion, they have shared a similar spirituality. The mother city of the Orthodox Church among the Slavs is Kyiv. That is where St. Vladimir came back after receiving his baptism and conducted a mass baptism of the people in the Dnieper River. And Vladimir Putin has called Kyiv the mother of all Russian cities, mostly because of this religious patrimony. So they both worship the same icon. They still have great devotion to what's now called Our Lady of Vladimir, previously Our Lady of Kyiv. And many pilgrims of both the Russian and Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and even the Ukrainian Catholic Church, still conduct pilgrimages to Rzeszow and also to the remaining Madonna of Kyiv inside St. Sophia's. So there is hope that Mary, as a mother to all of us, can bring peace where very few have been able to succeed in doing so.
Michael, I'm wondering, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us about Madonna of Kyiv that we haven't talked about?
Absolutely. Just to show you that this isn't just a weirdo Catholic and his obsession with artwork here. the former First Lady, Lukashenko, has been encouraging people to carry around an image of a Madonna of Kyiv and to devote themselves, to consecrate themselves, even if doing so while the people of Ukraine are bravely defending their homeland. So I think it's great that all Americans, if you can find this image, you might know her as Our Lady of Tenderness in the West. She is a mother to all of the Slavic people out there, and I think she is a great one that we can pray to and keep her image in our hearts.
Absolutely. And Michael, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us about all of this. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. God love you all.
And finally tonight, we have some exciting news to share. EWTN has launched a new news agency based in Iraq, focused on Christians in the Middle East and North Africa. Asi Mina will push original news content in Arabic. It will use a network of correspondents from across the region, including Editor-in-Chief Bashar Jamil Hanna, and operate out of Erbil's Catholic University. Alejandra Bermudez, Executive Director of Asi Group, says this is a major step forward for the group and the larger EWTN News family. We thank you all for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.